LinkedIn has done 100%, and in this way, it has driven revenue. It's helped keep us top of mind, visible, front and center. And so we're constantly reminded of what we're doing. We are engaging with our audience constantly. And so we are very visible, we're very salient. And it just means that we do get referred more business, even if it is then ultimately through other channels like email or like an introduction on the phone or whatever it might be. Because we're visible to our audience, and we're sort of omnipresent. It's not about like who's inquiring today. It's about who are we planting seeds with, so that when they are ready to buy, we are the obvious and only choice, basically. And that's what it's about. Or if someone asks someone about who should we hire for marketing, or who do you recommend, we should be the first choice because we've added so much value and we've been present in that person's life. So it's a longer term play for sure, but it works. You understand me and my tone of voice and my way of thinking. And so it doesn't take much for you to kind of like prod me with some prompts and ideas in order to get that content out there. Also, it's massively moved the needle for us in terms of an employer brand. More and more, I think people who join a company, who apply for a job, want to know about the culture. They want to know about the leadership. They want to know what it's like there. They like that transparency, right? And there's this whole movement around building in public and transparency and sort of openness. I think employees and prospective employees actually almost even expect that. So by sharing your wins, but also your challenges and your losses, as long as you do it authentically, I think it creates a degree of obviously authenticity, but also realness, that people want and they want to be part of. And so it's massively helped us on that front. You just sort of slot it into our process seamlessly, and you make it almost effortless, which is really, really nice. Because I think there's one thing that most founders or CEOs have in common is that they're probably time poor. And so, if you kind of slot into that and just kind of download their brain and take bits and run with it, I think that's really, really good. And you have a great way of doing that. So I would 100% recommend you to anyone who's interested in building their personal brand. If you are time poor, but you have a lot of expertise to share, you're happy to go on camera. Eleanor is a great fit. She's very disarming, and she makes it all very effortless and seamless. So yeah, 100%.
So joining me today is Derek, a founder and CEO of Ignite Growth. I think you're the UK's #1 healthcare marketing agency. Derek and his team have worked with over 500 clinics and generated over £25 million in revenue, which is amazing. Would you mind giving us a quick overview of yourself and the journey you've been on building Ignite?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for that very flattering introduction. So I started the business back in 2017, actually with no experience in paid advertising or actually with any experience in the clinical industries in which we operate, so dentistry, aesthetics, and medical. But, I kind of thought there was a gap in the market. Facebook ads in particular was quite new at the time, especially for smaller businesses like self-serve Facebook ads. And so I thought, look, if I can develop that skill, and if I can help attract higher value patients to clinics for private treatments, then that's something that's a valuable skill to have, and that's something that you can monetize. And really, for a long time, I'd wanted to start my own business. And so with this, I felt confident enough to at least take the leap into becoming a freelancer, and sort of slowly building it organically and bootstrap from there. So yeah, that's a bit of a background of Ignite, which has now been sort of 7 years. Started 7 years ago this year, basically.
Yeah, that was 2019 when we first actually connected, and I think I was one of the first people in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. You were one of the first people on the team. Definitely one of the first sort of dedicated roles. And actually, you know what? It was your YouTube and your video of Lisbon where I was like, okay, actually, she's got a really interesting set of skills, and she's really good at storytelling. And your blended skills between sort of videography, editing, and social media, I thought was a really unique find. And so I remember when we first spoke, I said, look, I wanted to double down on content and social. And I think that the value first approach really was something that you believed in and resonated with you. And that's what I wanted to do. So it was a pretty obvious choice, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's been such a long time now. Back then, we actually started off focusing on Instagram and Facebook mainly. But what's interesting is we started off by building your personal brand. So the Instagram handle was Derek.Ignite, and I wrote in your tone of voice rather than company voice. And you had actually already created some videos of yourself, talking head videos, which I thought was quite ahead of the curve. Like, you were already doing personal branding back then, which now has become much more popular. So I'm curious, why did you lean into personal branding way back then rather than focusing on building the agency social media presence?
No, it's a great question. So, I mean, when I started the business, that Ignite was Derek and Derek was Ignite. There was really no difference because I was a one man band, really. And so, in the beginning, it felt like a personal brand was the easiest way to establish credibility in the industry, to build trust in the industry, and to build myself as an authority. And so that worked really well because, especially I think with any sort of marketers or agencies, there tends to be a natural sort of distrust because there's so many people. There's no kind of entry criteria to become a marketing agency or to become a marketer. There's no sort of like obviously there are certifications, but there's no like minimal threshold or degree or whatever it might be that you have to get. And so the marketing industry as a whole is littered with sort of smaller, you know, uh, fly by night sort of marketers who just try their hand at something. And sometimes the approach can be quite sort of tacky and a bit sort of slimy and whatever. So I wanted to differentiate from that and stand out and build trust and build authority and very much lead with a value first approach. And I think initially that was inspired by Gary Vaynerchuk and his Jab, 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 Right Hook, where you just focus on content, you give, 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 give. But actually, we almost took it one step further. Not saying we're better than Gary Vaynerchuk, but we took it one step further insofar that actually we gave and we gave and we gave and we gave, and we very rarely actually asked for anything in return. So with Gary, you've got the jab, 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 right hook. For us, it was just jab, 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 jab. And so in the beginning, in the early stages, that personal brand worked really well because I was the business. And so in order to, when I was getting on the phone with people or getting on a sales call with people, if they felt like they knew me already, that trust was there, that authority was there. And so I was able to make that phone call as an expert, and the customer or prospect would then be seeking advice and guidance. And so then it becomes way more of a consultative sale and a value-based sale rather than just, hey, how much can you run my campaign for? Oh, that's so expensive. I'm going to go somewhere cheaper. And so for me, it was a real differentiator to have that personal brand. And for me, that's why the focus was there.
Absolutely. And after a couple of years, we did switch on Instagram and Facebook. We did switch the brand to the company brand. Why did you feel like there was a need to do that? And then we can go into how we started kind of focusing on LinkedIn. But at the time, LinkedIn wasn't a huge focus for us. But yeah, maybe explain kind of the switch and what that meant for you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, at some point, the reality is I switched from the personal brand to building Ignite as a business brand, and the main motivation really for that was that I wanted to separate myself from the business, and because it got to a point where I was becoming a bottleneck in the business operationally, but also in terms of customers, expecting to speak to me and be looked after by me. And we got to a point where we were at a scale where that just didn't work anymore. And so I was building an account management team, trying to build a sales team, building a campaign team. And you can't be doing everything anymore at some point. And so I guess to some degree it led to a degree of burnout where I was like, look, I need to focus on building the business brand, which is a standalone, sustainable brand away from me, because otherwise ultimately you have a job, you still have a job, you don't have a business. And so I wanted to make that separation. I would say it set us back in terms of our growth for sure, because people connect with people and people want to buy from people. And so the personal brand is actually such an amazing vehicle for that. But I had to sort of draw boundaries, and it was a very conscious decision. Definitely don't regret it. I wish maybe I had kept a personal brand going in parallel. I think that was really, really valuable. But at the time, I just had to set boundaries and just sort of become a little bit more reclusive, because I felt like I was giving too much of myself, being too accessible, too available. And that was no longer sort of in keeping with who we were as a company and our operating model and how we serve clients. So for me, it was a really, really important shift. Though, as I said, in hindsight, I probably should have kept the personal brand going, but I just didn't have the headspace and the capacity and the zest at that time.
When we switched to the company brand, we still tried to keep kind of the people kind of first approach as well. We're leveraging the team as the experts and get the team on the videos, on the reels. So it's a change. People expect it to be you, but I think still like focusing on people has been the key. And now, like, you've built a pretty strong employer brand as well. Kind of showcasing the behind the scenes and kind of the fun environment that Ignite is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I mean, and I guess we'll get to this. You might have a question around this, but I think what I really, the reason for revisiting and doubling down on the personal brand is because ultimately
Mm,
you could leverage a personal brand as a
mm,
vehicle for your company brand as well. So you could leverage a personal brand as a growth vehicle for your
mm.
company brand, and so the two can still be separate.
Yep.
And to some degree, your personal brand might be transferable insofar that
Mm,
if you set up, another business or on the side, or you diversify or whatever, that could be a separate thing altogether.
hmm.
Speaking engagements or whatever it might be, but the personal brand is still a vehicle for business growth. It's just that the two are separate and distinct, basically.
Yeah, I think with us as well, Ignites, I mean, your target audience is mainly on Instagram, and LinkedIn at the time wasn't a huge focus for us. And I think back then it wasn't what it is now as well. Personal branding on LinkedIn has become big. And I started noticing that in like early 2023. We were kind of reposting the same content there on your personal profile company page, but we didn't really focus on it. So I did see the opportunity there. I came up with a few like content ideas. We did a content call and started trialing new content. And around September, October, I came to you with the idea of let's do this. Let's focus on this. Let's post 3 times a week. Create unique content that's comes from you. And some of these pieces are not going to be on the company brand because it doesn't make sense. You're talking about how you're growing the business, etc. Ever since starting around 10 months ago, how have you found that process when we started to focus on it more properly?
Yeah,
And
yeah, great question. I mean, it's been great to be honest, and I mean, you very much I've very much been led by you, and you've sort of been quite proactive in terms of coming up with ideas and proposals. And I think, I mean, obviously we've worked together for a long time, but you understand me and my tone of voice and my sort of my way of thinking, and so it doesn't take much for you to kind of like prod me with some prompts and ideas in order to get that content out there. But no, it's been a really seamless experience. I remember when we first spoke about it, kind of deliberately last year, which I can't believe it's already 10 months ago. I mean, in my head it's still like January. But anyway, we set out sort of a. I remember speaking to you and I was like, okay, Eleanor, yep, I'm happy to go down this path. Let's try it. As it happens, we're doing more work with sort of larger enterprises. So the B2B play is really interesting for us on LinkedIn. But I was also like, okay, what does that look like? How can we measure this? And I know, the sort of the ROI measurement and the attribution and stuff is a little bit harder with this because it's not always as linear as say running a paid ad campaign. But anyway, nonetheless, we sort of set out a rough target, and I think we modeled it out at like 5% follower growth per month, basically.
Mhm.
Which that's a lofty, like that's compounding, so that's quite a lofty goal to be honest. And I know at the moment, at least as of last month, I think we are actually more or less on target or above that. So
Mhm.
we've definitely achieved that. We've had really good engagement. It's been interesting. We've definitely had um, messages and DMs from
Mhm.
um, partners, prospective clients, relationships in the industry. Uh,
Mhm.
I can't remember whether how many of them sort of converted to actual relationships. However,
Mhm.
what LinkedIn has done 100%, and in this way it has driven revenue, is it's helped keep us top of mind, visible, front and center. And so
Yep.
we're constantly reminded of what we're doing. You know, we are engaging with our audience constantly. And so we are very visible, we're very salient. And it just means that we do get referred more business, even if it is then ultimately through other channels like email or like an introduction on the phone or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Because we're visible to our audience, and
Mhm.
we're sort of omnipresent. And by engaging with other influential people in our industry, um, we are just getting that visibility and that
Mhm.
credibility. So it has really moved the needle for us on that front. Also, specifically, it's massively moved the needle for us in terms of an employer brand.
Mhm.
More and more, I think people who join a company, who apply for a job, want to know about the culture. They want to know about the leadership. They want to know. what it's like there. They like that transparency, right? And there's this whole movement around building in public and transparency and sort of openness. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, I think employees and prospective employees actually almost even expect that.
Mm.
So by sharing your wins, but also your challenges and your losses, and it as long as you do it authentically, I think it creates a degree of obviously authenticity, but also
Mm.
realness. That people want and they want to be part of. And
Mm.
so it's massively helped us on that front.
Mm.
I've had, in fact, and you just did a post for me, which was a roundup for the first half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a DM from a candidate who applied for one of the jobs we have open, but she wasn't the right
Mm.
fit. So the conversation didn't move forward. She
Mm.
wrote me personally saying, like, I found your LinkedIn content so inspiring. Please keep me
Mm.
in the loop on any future roles you might have at Ignite. So,
Mm.
whatever we're doing has been really, really effective. And I'm going to massively keep it up and double down on it because it does move the needle considerably.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. It's really cool to hear that feedback and what can come off the back of those posts. What we're doing, it's more, yeah, it's more brand building really. It's not lead generation campaign. So yeah, I mean, it kind of, I guess, already explained, but just seeing the value in it, even though month on month there might not be like direct return on investment, but it's more like a long term game, I think. And I think you really understand that really well and explain it really well.
Well,
So
it
yeah.
is, but also like, we go to trade shows and there are sort of peers in the industry and people in the industry that we work with that, they work at device manufacturers or pharma companies or whatever it might be. So those are like sales reps and territory managers who are out in the field. They're seeing clinics, they're working with clinics. They are massive players in the industry, basically. And so we
Mm-hmm.
meet them at trade shows, and that's obviously face-to-face touch point. But in between those trade shows, which happen, let's say, quarterly or every few months, like we are engaging with each other's content on LinkedIn, and so they know what
Mm.
we're up to. They see our case studies. They kind of
Mm.
get us and our values as a company. They get my values and my stance. We're not just sort of um, talking about our wins and putting up our nose at other people. It's candid and it's real. It's not about
Mm.
keeping up a facade. Like this
Mm.
year has been a really tough year, and
Mm.
we put that out there. But we've also done a lot of good stuff, and so I think as long as you are who you say you are, and there's no kind of keeping up appearances, then I think you can really resonate with the right people, and you can really um, build those relationships in like a sort of like a one to many way. And I think
Yep.
that's ultimately the power, because it's not
Mm.
about like who's acquiring today. It's
Mm.
about who are we planting seeds with,
Mm.
so that when they are ready to buy, we are the obvious and only choice, basically. And
Mm.
that's what it's about. Or if someone asks someone about who should we hire for marketing or who do you recommend, we should be the first choice because we've added so
Mm.
much value and we've been present in that person's life. So it's a longer term play for sure,
Mm.
but it works.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. We've also had in-person content days. So I've come into the office, shoot some talking head videos, as well as capture the team. How have you found the video shooting process and the quality of the content produced?
Yeah, really good. So I mean, obviously you've shot for us for a number of years. I mean, 4 or 5 years. You've done quite a few shoots over that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I never quite understood until recently when we've actually had started hiring for videographers for one of the departments in the company. Uh, how, and I'm not saying this to flatter you, but how you, but it is flattering. So how unique the skill is of being able to one sort of uh, operate, like communicate well in an environment and disarm people on camera and make them feel comfortable and sort of self-direct and ask questions, to actually shoot and capture the content. So, the actual production and how you light it and the setup and the scene and all that stuff. And then finally, the editing piece.
Mm.
And honestly, I think to have all those skills is actually not that common, uh,
Mm.
especially based on the interviews I've been doing in the last few months. Videographers are often in one camp or the other, so either they communicate very well, but maybe technically with the camera they're not that great, or they
Mm.
don't communicate well, but they're very good, but they're very much creative, and so in a business environment they sort of struggle. I would say you're really good at putting people at ease, making them feel comfortable, and I think that's really important, especially if people are less confident or comfortable on camera.
Mm.
You just sort of like blend in, and you disarm people. You're great with the camera. You're obviously very passionate about what you do, and you're great at editing. So I think you've got a really unique skill set that honestly just makes it easy for anyone, really. But equally, it's very easy to take for granted, and that skill set is very unique.
Appreciate that. Very kind words. So we also did a LinkedIn personal branding workshop for the team. So I held a 1.5 hour Zoom workshop and hosted a 6 week posting challenge to encourage the team to get active on LinkedIn and build their personal brand. Firstly, not every founder CEO encourages their employees to build their brand. Why do you do that?
Yeah, well, it was a suggestion you put forward, and I thought it was a great one because ultimately, look, we are not, Ignite is not a prison. Like, we're not here to keep our employees captive. And so, like, we want everyone to grow, and that means growing in their own skill set and careers, but also it means growing their own personal brands and supporting them in doing that. And if that means ultimately they leave, in a year or whatever because they've been spotted and opportunities come along, well, that's fine. I mean, we're growing these individuals, and we're investing in them basically. And so for me, I have a very pragmatic view on it. All people should stay with Ignite because they want to stay and because we're challenging them and we're helping them grow. And so I thought it was a no-brainer. But also, the flip side, look, not everyone has to do it. We didn't force anyone to do it. We had really good uptake. People really enjoyed it. There was good banter, and I think there was a really good sort of camaraderie where people were liking and engaging each other's posts. And I really love to see that because it wasn't just all about work. It was genuinely about the people themselves. It wasn't just like spurting out, Ignite, this and that, we're the best, hire us. It was nothing like that. It was very much like, obviously there was a theme every month or every week, but it was about the person rather than about the company. And so I really loved how the team engaged with each other. But as a byproduct, it increased the visibility of Ignite. And I think that's amazing. It can only help. So I really loved the workshop we ran. It was honestly one of the best lunch and learns we've had. The team found it super useful. The feedback was really good. And so, and I think the team really enjoyed it basically. And a number of them are keeping up on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've noticed, but a number of them are sort of still posting.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I highly recommend that to anyone really who's working with you because it's a great way to engage your employees and your team and get them on side.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think some of the roles are becoming more like you almost like it's a really big benefit if you are good at content creation? So, for example, Jasmine, she's an account manager, but she also has really upped her content game and like shooting videos and things like that. And that might be like in the future that you're looking for people who are also good at creating content. Absolutely. Even if that's not their main role.
Absolutely. I think certainly in customer facing roles, in account management roles, customer success and sales roles, business development roles, partnership roles, 100%. I mean, anyone can do it. But I think especially in those roles, I think it's more important than ever because a lot of people think of content creation as this sort of isolated thing that you do. But actually, it's not about content creation as much as it is about documenting. And so if you're going to a trade show, if you're going to see a client, if you're going into the clinic or whatever it might be, you can document whilst you do that. And that is then a byproduct of your level of service and what you're doing and your skill set. And so I think we'll see more and more of that. And also, like, quite honestly, when we're hiring and especially for the social media management role we're looking for at the moment. Like we do look at LinkedIn and we look at is someone active and what is their copywriting like and we're hiring a videographer at the moment and as it happens that candidate has a very active LinkedIn. Their style of writing is very good. They've got on there. So it paints a picture basically for sure. So I think and also especially in sales roles, I think if you build a personal brand on LinkedIn and you're visible and you're you articulate well and you're vocal. I think it's really, really powerful, especially if it aligns with the values of your company and also aligns with the values of your prospects. Obviously, if you start posting about politics, wars, etc., religion, it gets a little complicated. Other than that, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, and it just makes for better content as well, especially as a remote team. Just some more like on-site content, being able to shoot that on-site on trade shows. It just helps the whole like social media efforts tremendously, because as a remote team, it's hard, isn't it?
Exactly. But you know
Make
what?
that.
Sometimes all it takes is a couple of catalysts in the team, and then they run
Yeah.
the rest of the team. I think, look, it is ultimately it is awkward to take your phone and walk around like this and talk to the phone, and you feel people
Mm.
functions and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, it's more and more common. But sometimes all it takes is a couple of people in the team to be a little bit more comfortable with that and to kind of be the catalyst and to encourage other people to get involved as well. So
To wrap up, you've got big things coming this year. You're kind of rebranding, repositioning, new services. Could you share some insight into what's happening behind the scenes, and what are you focusing on, and how does the personal branding efforts, how do they fit into the overall?
yeah, no, fair enough. So, I mean, historically, Ignite has always been very much an ad-focused business. We've very much been focused on ROI, generating leads, performance-based marketing. Look, it served us really well. It's helped us grow over the last 7 years from where we started to where we are now. We've made a huge impact on our clients, as you mentioned, £25 million plus in revenue generated, which has been great. Um, Look, the game has changed over the years. It's become more competitive. Ad costs are going up, and so in order to really differentiate and to really stand out and to really to be able to charge a premium and be the obvious choice, I think clinics need to double down on content. I think a lot of the types of clinics we work with, their craft is very visual in nature. It's transformative in nature, and the best way to showcase that is through a visual media like content and video and photography and so forth. So we are doubling down on content, basically content as a service to clinics, but also content ourselves for Ignite. So as part of that, we are bringing in a new social media manager, a content creator, to help with that, to very much live and breathe the content first ethos. And also, we are rebranding the entire business again with very much a content first approach in mind. So the website rebranding, new logo, a bit more sort of a bit younger, modern, confident, bold. Um, and the website will be very much content first, very sort of visual. So yeah, we're super excited about that. We've done about 50 videography shoots so far this year, which has been a major step in the right direction. The final part of the puzzle that we're adding on to our services is social media management. So then we'll be able to support clinics end to end, from content creation to managing their social media to then also running campaigns. And ultimately, through that holistic support, we will be able to drive better results. And ultimately, it's not just about generating leads, but also we'll be able to help these clinics build a brand, plant seeds with people, and kind of build a legacy. Organic social has made a massive comeback. As far as clinics were concerned, 4 or 5 years ago, it was very hard to get any reach and visibility on Facebook, Instagram. Similar, it was better, but it started declining. I think TikTok has meant that everyone has changed their algorithms away from a social algorithm to more of a content algorithm. And Facebook and Instagram have very much followed in that direction. So we have TikTok for that. So now, look, even if you have 0 followers, you can get reach, you can get seen, you can go viral. So now is the moment for us to double down on that.
Absolutely, it's become very visual, hasn't it? So video content and reels and things like that. People are curious about the treatments, the story behind the clinics, things like that. For you, how does your personal branding efforts, how does that fit into kind of growing the business?
I think the personal brand gives people an insight into where we're going and the rationale behind that. And so I see the personal brand almost being several steps ahead of the business brand, insofar that like the personal brand also gives some insight into like the decision making, the rationale, and like what direction we're moving in. So now, for example, the personal brand is very much focused on content, whereas if you actually go to, I mean, our socials are very content forward, but if you go to our website, for example, there's not much mention of content. But we're doubling down on that, and we'll have a big reveal probably in the beginning of October. And so the personal brand kind of like it leads the way. And it gives people context, and I think that's kind of how we use it. So it's a pretty good barometer for like what's to come, where we sort of share the direction of travel, strategy, insights, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I see the personal brand. I use it to plant seeds and to kind of the direction of the narrative is kind of shaped there.
Amazing. And final question, would you recommend us for other founders? And in your opinion, what type of founders or businesses would benefit from personal branding, founder-led content, specifically on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would 100% recommend you and your services. You're fantastic. You just sort of slot it into our process seamlessly, and you make it almost effortless, which is really, really nice. Because I think there's one thing that most founders or CEOs have in common is that they're probably time poor. And so, if you kind of slot into that and just kind of download their brain and take bits and run with it, I think that's really, really good. And you have a great way of doing that. So I would 100% recommend you to anyone who's interested in building their personal brand. Who I think would benefit the most? Well, it's a great question. I think, to be honest, a lot of people can benefit from building their personal brand. I mean, B2B and B2C. If you're more LinkedIn focused, then B2B is probably the right type of business. So you could be an agency owner as long as it's not a competitor of ours, and or a SaaS business, or any sort of product-based business, service-based business where you can wrap your product and service up in expertise and thought leadership. And so I think B2B is an obvious fit for LinkedIn. But of course, if you are B2C, I think that could work well on Instagram and channels like that as well. But yeah, 100% recommend. If you are time poor, but you have a lot of expertise to share, you're happy to go on camera, then Eleanor is a great fit. She's very disarming, and she makes it all very effortless and seamless. So yeah, 100%.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for your time today, and catch up soon.